The Person in the Woods. It was March during spring break. I was 16 years old at the time, and me and about 20 people went out into the woods in Surrey County and got a cabin on this nice little retreat center. We planned on staying there for 4 days. For a bit more detail, the cabin was surrounded on all sides by woods. To the west of the cabin are some hunting trails and a creepy abandoned trailer next to a small clearing with a single pine in the center. To the east there is a large field. At the far end of the field, there is a slope leading down to a beach. When going down the slope to the right, there is an area of higher elevation, and to the right was a valley that could be accessed from the beach. Anyways, on the last night, a group of about 8 of us decided to go down to the beach and sit around and sing songs while playing guitars. It was around 11 p.m. at night. Everything was going fine, and then 3 of the guys decided to head back to the cabin and get some food. They were gone for only 10 minutes before one of the guys got a call from his brother. His reaction to the call made it seem like something happened or someone was hurt. When he got off the phone, he said, "We have to leave right fucking now," in a hushed and panicky voice. We all asked why, and he told us that while the others were walking back, they found a rabbit at the top of the trail with its head cut clean off. Not ripped off like an animal's doing, but cut like someone took a knife to the rabbit. So we automatically thought they have to be fucking with us. We began walking back, brandishing the guitar and a metal pipe as weapons, in case they really weren't fucking with us. About halfway up the hill, we hear rustling and twigs snapping to our right, where the valley is. It sounded like someone was walking up the side of the very steep slope. We told them to knock it the fuck off, it was a joke and it wasn't funny. The movement to the right stopped very suddenly. We kept going, and once we neared the top of the hill, I turned on my phone's flashlight, and right on the ground in front of me lay a rabbit with its head cut clean off. We took off running and heard someone run out of the woods. We didn't stop running until we got to the cabin. When we got to the cabin, we found all the guys sitting inside. We locked up every door and all the windows as well. Me and 2 of the other guys stayed up all night to keep watch and make sure whatever it was didn't follow us to the cabin. We all fell asleep around 6:30 a.m. We woke up at 8 to someone flipping their shit about a decapitated rabbit head laying on the front porch in the front of the door. I don't know what that thing was, but let's never meet. Drunk theater creep. Tentatively posting this here as I'm fairly certain it belongs, though nobody was directly threatened by this man initially. This happened in March of 2014. I just turned 18 years old, and I've been working at my local movie theater for about 5 or 6 months. It wasn't a busy day by any means, and I was on register in the snack bar when the seemingly typical man approached with his popcorn, hot dog, pickle, and drink. The only thing I noticed immediately as strange was the fact that he was wearing sunglasses still, but even that didn't really set off any alarm bells. I rang him up, and as I did so, he asked me if I was Hispanic. I was caught off guard by this question as a red-haired, green-eyed white girl. I laughed a little bit and told him no, I wasn't Hispanic. His slur became evident. It wasn't until he started to lean over the counter that I became uncomfortable. He told me I had pretty eyes, and I thanked him as he paid, trying to get through the transaction as quickly as possible. Instead of heading to his movie, he took his food to a little island to my left, where we kept all our condiments, napkins, and straws. This was pretty normal, as most patrons did stop by here to at least grab a straw and whatever else they needed before their movie started. This man, however, immediately opened and began eating his hot dog and casually munching on his popcorn. Something about him gave me a very bad feeling, so I kept my eye on him for a ridiculous 2 hours before saying anything. I still regret waiting so long, but this was a slow weekday, and we only had one single podium set up at the front with poles set up that funneled to it from the entrance, so nobody was allowed into the lobby without a movie ticket. I watched him wander around the lobby, returning to the island periodically to eat his popcorn, and even had a couple of other guests ask me about him. I finally had enough of him when I saw him approach my best friend, who was on podium at the time. I'm fiercely protective of this girl, and I've confronted men multiple times for being inappropriate with her. This man, however, scared me bad enough that I was worried about confronting him directly. I went and found a manager and brought them up to speed on the situation. They approached him and then disappeared into the office, returning with the manager on duty of the day. I was too far away to hear any of the interaction from my register, but eventually our off-duty police officer, who was also our theater security, had to get involved, and they even had to get 2 more officers who were on duty because the man refused to leave and had even become violent. Anyways, they arrested the man, and apparently they found 4 daggers as well as a throwing star in his pocket. When asked why he was carrying so many weapons around, his response was, "Because I can't carry a gun." He was also very drunk. I'm not sure what became of him, but aside from the time a man threatened to skin me alive, it was the scariest thing I've ever dealt with at work. In hindsight, I should have reported him much sooner, but I did see his movie tickets, which were for 3 separate movies, come to find out, and I'm a suspicious person in general, so I chalked it up to paranoia until he started messing with my friend. She said he legitimately scared the hell out of her, though I can't really remember what he had said to her. It was a learning experience, to say the least. The night at the park. When I was younger, I lived in the suburbs of Chicago with my parents and my little sister at my grandparents' house. We used to be a close family, always getting together for birthdays, Thanksgivings, Christmas, etc., until they all became money hungry and held grudges against family members who couldn't get the money back to them right away. My story takes place on March 28, 2000. My family and some family friends gathered to my grandparents' house for my dad's 30th birthday. It was a surprise birthday party. I sometimes hated when we had family gatherings, because everyone asked to see how my front teeth were growing. I don't exactly remember why, but I had to get my 4 top teeth pulled out when I was real little. Everyone thought it was cute, because I'd always sing, "All I want for Christmas is my 4 front teeth." A couple hours into the party, my sister and my cousins, they weren't really my cousins, just family friends that I've known since I was a year old, and I started to get real bored. We couldn't play my Nintendo because everyone was in the basement drinking and playing games and watching whatever game was on at the time. We asked our parents if we could go to the park that started right down the streets, but the best part of the park was about a 4-minute walk. They were hesitant at first since it was already dark outside, but they said we could go for an hour as long as my cousin Steve, who was 12 years old at the time, would watch us and make sure nothing happened to us. At the park, we started off playing on the swings, competing as who could swing higher. My cousin Steve had a late start because he had to push my little sister to get her going. We quickly got bored of that game, and we decided to play what every awesome kid played: lava. We kind of mixed it up a bit and added Shark Attack in there as well. A little after we started playing, a guy who looked about my dad's age strolled into the park on a bicycle. He started to talk to us, but my big, brave cousin told him that we're not allowed to talk to strangers. The man had told us that he was just with my cousin's parents, and he only came here to check up on us and hang around to make sure nothing happened to us. I didn't remember seeing the guy at the party, but we listened to him anyways, because I know what we were thinking. But I figured he came to a party a little after we had left. He asked what we were playing. When we said lava and Shark Attack, he gave a weird smile and said, "My favorite games." This guy would always want to be the shark, and he grabbed my sister, my cousin Michelle, and I, and pick us up and spin us around. Of course, we didn't think anything of it because he knew our parents, right? Now, after playing for a while, he told us he was getting bored, and he asked if we wanted to come play at his house, and that he had a Nintendo and a PlayStation as well. We told them we would have to go and ask our parents, because we were only supposed to be at the park for an hour. He told us that's fine, but we can play for a little longer if we wanted to, which of course we did. Right in the middle of playing Shark Attack, and him grabbing my sister, a car pulled up to the gates of the park, and I heard someone scream in Polish. Then a "what the hell is going on here" in English. I saw my dad and my cousin's dad jump out of the car, and they start yelling at the guy, who had already hopped on his bike and started to take off. My cousins, my sister, and I were all dragged to the car by our parents, with them yelling at us in English and in Polish. asking what in the world we were thinking. They started to yell even more when we told them that the guy said he knew them. That's why we were playing with him. 9 years later, I found a website for registered sex offenders. I looked at all the sex offenders around my area where I live now in Indiana, and around all my friends' houses. After I was done with that, I looked them up by my grandparents' place. There was a sex offender literally 3 houses down from my grandparents' house. It was the guy from the park. I don't remember what the charges were for, but it's so scary to think that he could have kidnapped us, all of us, and ruined our lives. Thank God my dad was home. So a couple years back when I was around 5 or 6 years old, it was about 7 p.m. by the way, I was playing with a friend in a field not too far from my home. My parents could just see our heads through the window if they looked. Anyways, about 10 minutes later, my friend decides it's very late so she goes home. I was just minding my own business, running my fingers through the grass. This is when it happened. This huge African-American guy came out from an alleyway. He was in a business suit, red tie, and had big briefcase in his hand. He walked up to me with the largest stereotypical grin on his face and said, "Hello," to which I replied because I was usually nice to people. He then says, "Wanna see what's in my briefcase? I have tons of candy canes." Now, this was nowhere near Christmas. Heck, it was March. Something was strange about this guy. So I said no to him. So he proceeds to open his briefcase, and there is a large pair of scissors, a hunting knife, you could say, some rope next to a small strap of duct tape, and an unused condom. I flipped out and started running with my little legs screaming something along the lines of, "Daddy, Daddy, a man is gonna kill me." Now, my dad is usually working at night, but because my dad's back ached so badly, he stayed off. My mom was out getting takeout, so let's get back to my story. My dad came rushing out with some sort of machete. I don't know. This guy kept walking very fast towards me. I just about reached my gates when he grabbed my shoulder and started to pull me away. My dad ran to him and grabbed me and threatened to stab the guy. My dad slowly walked backwards, keeping an eye on him. The guy threw his briefcase at my dad's back and ran off. My dad went poop crazy and tried to chase after him, but because of his bad back and he had been smoking, he quickly got out of breath and stopped. We called the police, and they never found him. I am now 17 years old and live in the same house. We never saw that guy again. It's best not to walk alone. One night, I decided to go with my good friend. It was around March time, still kind of dark here in Oregon. We hung out around the Max station for a couple hours, talking and catching up on life. I live fairly close to the Max station, so I decided to walk back home once we had said our goodbyes. There was this one street with light posts, but some lazy fuckers don't care to fix them. I'm walking the street alone like the dumbass I am. I'm always glancing behind me no matter what time of day it is when I walk alone. There's this guy following me, about 5'7" in height, Hispanic, much older than myself, and definitely stronger. I am a girl who's about 4'10", no muscles at all, and 111 pounds. Shit like this always creeps me out. I walk a little faster, and he notices. Then he speaks up. "Girl, why you walking so fast?" I about crap my pants. Remind you, it's freaking pitch black down the street. I know what this guy wanted. I wasn't going to risk anything. I pick up my pace even more, so does he. "Stop walking so fast, just come here." At this point, I can see one lamppost that's actually working. Also, there are 2 women walking down the street. I cross the road quickly and go up to them. "Hey, can I walk with you guys? This guy's following me." I say quietly, enough for him not to hear. They look at him and see he's crossed the street to our side too. They can tell I'm creeped out as hell, and they ask me where I live. I point to the apartment complex up the streets, and they begin to walk with me. This guy is still here. Once we walk by him, he asks, "Where are you ladies going?" We ignore him, now feeling much safer. He followed us a bit more afterwards, but eventually we lost him. I ran home once the two ladies dropped me off. Let's just say I don't go out much anymore. Hooded man under the market cross. I created a Reddit account today just to share the story. It gave me a real scare when it happened. This is a true account and happened Wednesday night, March 11th, 2015. Let me start by saying I live in a very small town in England. The type that has bad mobile signal, unlimited Wi-Fi and 3G signals, and way too many immigrants. So it's not the safest place to be walking around at nighttime. So I'll set the scene for you guys. 5 teens, Tasman, Martin, Emma, Mitchell, and me. Lorraine, all age 19, decide to throw a flat party at the flat of 2 of the teens. Mitchell and Emma got a flat together when Emma turned 18 years old to move out of an aggressive household. Both have good jobs and both are responsible, but haven't had a party for a long time. So Tasman, who mentions she's only back from university for the week, says she wants to see people, and Emma decides to throw a party with the help of the rest of us. In the end, only a total of 19 show up. I say we're all teens, but there was a 122-year-old, and the party goes really well. And at around 10 p.m., Mitchell tells me he wants to get some food, so he decided to walk to the kebabi on the other side of town. Let's just note that Mitchell and Emma live in a flat above a shop on the high street, so they're close to all the takeaways. Mitchell only had a few drinks and could hold his alcohol well, whereas I had about 5 spirits at this point and was fairly tipsy. So 2 other partygoers decided to come with us. So a group of 4, me, Mitchell, Colin, and Millie, go walking. 5 minutes out the door, and we're already complaining about stairs and end up running out. We're being obnoxiously loud, not caring about the 50 or so other flats along the high streets. We were borderline drunk, so we run up to the high streets, stopping for 10 minutes to play on a child's ride. The ones you had to put $1 into to play. We all bought money for the food, so we had about 2 goes on it, apart from Colin, who sat under the Market Cross monument and is having a conversation with a guy who lived above the library who was shouting out his window and playing loud music. After a few compliments to the guy's jungle music, we all moved up and eventually got to the shop, where we waited for 20 minutes for our food to be ready. Once it was ready at about 10:35 p.m., me and Millie ran with the pizzas from the boys as a joke and hid it in a carpeted alley that led to some shops. The boys walked right past us, although we're sure they saw us run inside, so we had to run out and follow them. Millie and Mitchell decided to run off to go peer into shop windows in the dark, whereas Colin walked slower than all of us and I was in the middle. When I walked past the Market Cross, I peered into it and saw a guy in a gray hoodie holding a large knife. Now, I was drunk, so I wasn't sure I'd seen it, but I just looked around casually, pretending I didn't see a thing. Then yelled, "Millie! Mitchell, wait up!" and ran towards them. I stopped near them as I peered into the shop that Mitchell worked at and said, "I think the guy under the monument has a knife." They both got really concerned and I said, "Well, we all know I'm not sober, so I might not have seen what I thought I saw, but I'm still scared." At that point, Millie turned around to go check, which is when Colin appeared and turned around, hurrying her forward. He said, "Keep walking, the guy has a knife." We're all freaked out, and the hooded man was now out from under the Market Cross and walking fast behind us. Me and Millie let out a loud, unsure giggles and ran. We were in complete flight mode and very close to home, so we ran around the alley next to Mitchell's work and into the fire escape of the flats, and bolted up the stairs, the top floor, and into the flat. Mitchell was close behind, and it wasn't until we set the food down and started telling our friends what had happened did we realize Colin wasn't with us. We freaked out, and I like to say I was brave and went to see if he was okay, but I wasn't. I was sitting, hiding, next to a sofa as Mitchell declared he was going to see if he was okay. 5 minutes later, Mitchell and Colin returned, both okay. Turns out Colin had waited at the alley when he realized an old man was still on the street, and he wanted him to get into his car safe. So he waited until the old man drove away and barely noticed as the knife-wielding guy approached him and said, "Did you enjoy my jungle music?" before walking away, as Mitchell appeared behind Colin with an obvious phone in his hand. Mitchell and Colin called the police. They took all of our names and gave a statement. They called back around an hour later to say they couldn't find the guy, but would get some CCTV from surrounding shops the next day. They also confirmed that the old guy had called about it, so they knew we weren't just drunk kids making it up. So, guy with a knife, let's not meet. Definitely won't be going on the high street drunk again. Banging hotel creep. In my 20 years, I've had a crap load of uber creepy encounters. From home break-ins during which I was home to being stalked by a customer at my first job. This particular incident, however, is the most clear to me. A little bit of background information before I jump right in. I was 14 years old at the time and weighed about 95 soaking pounds. My parents had recently gone through a divorce, so our funds were sparse to say the least. I was and still am incredibly religious. At the start of the school year, my school-toothed 8th grade history teacher started planning out a $900 per student trip to Washington, D.C. for the following March. I wanted to go, but like I said before, my family just didn't have the funds. March rolled around, and 1 week before the trip's scheduled departure date, one of my fellow students dropped out of the trip, leaving a fully paid trip behind. My history teacher knew just how badly I wanted to go, so he offered me the free trip to DC. My mom had to have me go to the school by 6 a.m. the morning of the trip. I'll never forget what she said to me that morning as she was leaving the school. And please remember, you don't open hotel doors for anyone unless you know beyond a shadow of a doubt you know that person. Ask who it is and look through the people. I remember thinking she was being silly. I would never just open a hotel door all willy-nilly. Little did I know that her advice would come in handy, big time. Fast forward 16-ish hours, and we're stopping for the night at our first hotel. It's important to note that the girls were on the 3rd floor, the chaperones on the 2nd floor, and the boys on the 1st. My 3 roommates and I stumbled into our room at the end of the hall, half awake. At 11:55 p.m., someone knocked on our door. I followed my mom's instructions and called out, "Who is it?" and then checked the people to see the head female chaperone. She just wanted to remind us all the lights were going to go out at 12:15 and we would be meeting in the lobby at 7 a.m. Okay, cool. 1:30 a.m. comes, and I'm still wide awake reading, while the other 3 girls were watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Smart, we were all enjoying ourselves, granted a little on edge due to the movie, when someone knocked at the door. What? I very calmly got up and said, "Who is it?" No answer. I said, "Who is it?" Still no answer. I looked through the people just as a tallish, white, old-looking strange man was walking away. Maybe he just had the wrong room. I told my friends it was no one, just our imaginations because of the movie. I did not mention the man. I didn't want to freak them out. I went back to my book. They went back to the movie. Not 10 minutes later, there's another knock at the door, but this time, it was followed by an insistent jiggling of the door handle. We all looked at each other, and this time, I did not go to the door. I said a quick prayer and grabbed a chair in the room, dragged it up to the door with the top of the chair under the door handle, and piled up our 4 suitcases on top of it as best as I could. Stupid me figured that'd be enough, so I didn't lock the deadbolt. An hour passes, and we're all just grabbing away when someone starts pounding on our door, shaking the lock and screaming, "Let me in, you bitch, let me in!" He kept doing it for a solid minute before banging the door one last time and then silence. After maybe 2 minutes of shaking and praying, I walked over to the door to find the chair on its back with the suitcases scattered across the floor. He banged and shook the door that hard. I called the head male chaperone and had him come up to our room. He called the front desk staff, who called the cops, who upon further inspection of the door found that it had burn marks where it would seem that the guy had been trying to light our door on fire. The next morning, a few other girls were asking around if anyone else heard loud bangs and screaming, but only a handful had. I asked a couple of the other girls if anything strange has happened to them, and one girl said yeah, some old guy came to her door, but I told him to fuck off. I don't know what this guy wanted, why he so desperately wanted it in our room, or why burning down our door would be smart, but I haven't ignored my mom's advice since that night. Happy birthday, Miss President. Okay, so this is now 13 years removed from the situation now. As I'm looking back as an adult, I realize how wildly inappropriate this is. Back at my high school, in a medium-ish affluent city, I had the same teacher for 2 intro to law classes, American history, and I ended up TAing for him for a couple other classes. He was totally weird and had urine-colored hair and drank unrefrigerated Mott's apple juice straight from the bottle, which often had a ton of stuff floating in it. Probably mold, because those bottles were weeks old. Gross. Anyways, anytime a girl would have a birthday, he would make her sit in front of the classroom on a little stool and sing, "Happy Birthday." That could have been normal, but he sang in a very sexy style that Marilyn Monroe sang to JFK when she was wearing that little white dress, and he would shake and shimmy his way all around the stool while he was doing this. No one wants to see a 65-year-old man do any of this for any goddamn reason. I think I might have been the only weird JFK-obsessed high schooler that got the reference, but everyone knew it was creepy. He would also insist on dramatically putting a ratty old blanket over the girl's knees and their legs so no one would accidentally see up her skirt if she unluckily was wearing one. The last thing is that anytime he was alone in the bungalow with a female student, he would go over to the front door and open it wildly and say that he was doing that for his and her comfort. It's only weird if you mention it, dude. Thanks for the memories, Mr. A, but let's not meet again, okay? Followed by a mime in the forest near my house. This happened to me and mainly my sister back in the year 2008. We're from the Netherlands, in a little village, I guess you could say, called the Wiesenhof, which is part of the city Nijmegen. There is a circular path in the woods section of our neighborhood. So kind of an outline here. Our backyard faced a pond. You had to walk along the pond around 2 to 3 minutes before you entered the woods. It right away had a path, which you would go in a large circle within the woods. Usually people took their dogs out there or just jogging, the typical everyday stuff. It was absolutely beautiful though. Me and my family always took our dogs in that forest. The circle took around 20 to 30 minutes to walk, so it was perfect for a good length exercise for us. Now, you guys have a vision. I'll start the story. I was around 10 years old at the time and my sister was 14. She decided to take out her dogs and asked me to come along. Taking that I didn't really have much to do, I said sure. So we were walking the normal path. We had a small dog and a big dog. I was holding the big dog, whose name was Jip, and he was a typical alpha male dog who always wanted to be up front. Our smaller dog, whose name was Evie, was typically very calm and always liked taking her time, so she was sniffing on spots for a good length of time. Jip was getting particularly anxious and wanted to keep on walking, so he was pulling me. Being 10 at the time, he had quite a lot of force, so I told my sister I'd be a bit further up while she let Evie finish up her sniffing spree. My sister was fine with that. We live in a super safe area, just your typical Western European village, no troublemakers around, just a super clean-cut area. So we never assumed anything would go wrong. It just never occurred to us. While I had turned the corner of the four-pointed forest path, I looked back and saw Evie was still profusely sniffing, so I just walked a bit further out of sight of my sister. Not even a minute later, my sister came quite frantically around the corner, hurrying Evie along with her, and told me to continue walking. I saw the fear on her face, and did as I was told. The way home, she was dead silent, not saying anything. I was, of course, very confused and scared, and didn't know how to react. So just keeping up with her pace. Jip also helped with that. But once we made it home, I asked her what happened. And she said she saw a man dressed up as a mime, staring at her from behind a tree. and that she tried to act like she didn't notice. But her facial expressions must have given her away. As when she started walking, the Mime started following her. Not on the path, though, but systematically behind each tree. She swore every time she looked back, he was behind the next tree. Apparently, when she turned the corner, she didn't see him anymore. I didn't really know what to think. I felt bad I had gone further with Chip, but my 10-year-old mind didn't really assume that anything could go wrong in such a safe area, which is why it came across as even more of a shock. My sister hasn't said anything about it since that day, but she knew for certain she saw a man dressed as a mime. It didn't seem to affect her too much afterwards, luckily. But it must have been quite a scare, knowing that I wasn't in sight and knowing some freak dressed up as a mime was following her. Luckily, nothing else happened, and we have since moved. So, creepy woods mime, let's not meet. Creepy truck driver, it's cold outside. Ever since I met the creepy truck driver, I watch what I wear in my neighborhood and around the area of my neighborhood. This happened a few months ago in March of 2016. This is very clear and very recent. One day in March, I left my house because I need to take the bus in order to get to my classes. I'm in college. I didn't like what I was wearing, and I was already walking up a big hill in my neighborhood and almost about out of it. I decided to call my boyfriend and ask him to bring a pair of sweatpants because I felt uneasy with my outfit on, and it gave off a bad feeling. Within 5 minutes of hanging up with the phone with my boyfriend, a white truck drives slowly behind me. When I turn around to see who it was, the driver drove slowly next to me. This is how the conversation went with the creep truck driver. "Hello, you look very gorgeous, and I just wanted to let you know, do you need a ride?" Considering I didn't like what I was wearing, this made me feel like a prostitute, but I politely declined, stating that I have a ride. "Are you sure, because you look cold?" I politely declined again, stating it was alright and that I'll be fine. After the second try, he gave up, so I thought. I immediately called my boyfriend and told him to stay on the phone with me until I at least got on the bus. When I turned the corner to walk down the street to get to the bus stop, I saw garden workers, and in front of their truck was the creepy truck driver parked waiting for me. When I got close enough to his truck once again, he asked me if he could give me a ride using the same excuse about it being cold outside. I politely declined for the third time. Once I got on the bus, I hung up the phone with my boyfriend, and I called my best friend. As I was explaining what happened, I noticed the creepy truck driver following the bus. He followed the bus for about 15 minutes, until the bus broke down and the police came onto the bus for a different reason. The second bus came, so I did end up making it safe to school. A week after the creepy truck driver tried getting me into his car, my parents went to see a show, and my brother was working, so I was home alone with my dog. An hour after my parents left, I heard my dog going crazy, the doorbell ringing nonstop, and lots of knocking. I looked at the window, and it's a stupid truck driver. He didn't see me, though, because I peeped through the blinds. By the time I called the neighborhood patrol, he was gone, but they watched my house for a few days, thinking that was the last straw, because now it's May of 2016 and nothing happened for a few good months. Until last week, when I was with my best friend walking to Taco Bell. We noticed a red truck driving very slowly. I looked at the driver, and guess who? It's a stupid, creepy truck driver. And he just smiled and waved with his new truck. I don't know how Mr. Creepy Truck Driver knew where I lived or knew which way I took to the bus, which gives me chills to this day. This might be too early to say this because I have a feeling things aren't over with, but let's just say it, Mr. Creepy Truck Driver. Let's not meet again. Advice for my mom? My mom is a college professor, and tonight, she teaches in the evening once a week in person. She had a really creepy experience with a student. After telling me the experience, she started trying to justify it. I found it really scary and want some advice for her. Apparently there is a guy in her class who failed it twice now. If he flunks one more time, he's out. He's plagiarized on a paper he submitted this evening, and she deducted significant points for it. Several other students also plagiarized, and she said that if anyone had questions about avoiding this issue, to meet with her after class to address them. He asked her to step into the hallway, as she and a few other students were packing to go. In the hallway, instead of asking about the plagiarism and the grades, etc., like she expected, he asked her the following. "Did you hear about that recent murder case here in town, where the 3 men bound that woman and beat her to death? Bear in mind, the course my mom teaches has no bearings on this subject at all." My mom said, "Yes, apparently this is a big local case." He said, "Do you know what happened to the men who did it? Did they catch them all?" Mom said she didn't know at this point. She told me she felt really unnerved. He said, "Do you know if the murder was sexual at all, or?" Mom said, I don't know. Why are you asking?" Apparently he replied, "Well, I was in the courthouse dealing with a legal issue the day the men were tried, and the other week, and I was just wondering if you knew about it." Then apparently he smiled at my mom and said, "I bet you didn't expect me to ask you about that, did you? Good night," and left. My mom said the hair stood up on the back of her neck when he smiled at her. She told me this story just tonight when she got home, and I freaked, thinking of this thread and how many creepy things happen every single day. I told her to call her boyfriend, who is a lawyer and a judge, and he implied that my mom may have been leading the student on. Really sick. My mom is like in her 60s and a professional lady. The dude has jealousy issues. My mom got off the phone and immediately started trying to rationalize it as him trying to shake her up because he might be afraid of getting kicked out of school. I don't understand how that would fit with what he said or how it would make this appropriate. After talking to her empathetically, she agreed to contact his academic advisor tomorrow and have the incident put on his file. But I really think that this will do nothing, and that's not the correct person to whom to report something like this. She's had the student before, and says no creepy vibes at all till now. We googled him and found some mugshots from a while back, but his crime wasn't listed, and weirdly, we found his infant daughter died this past year. Anyways, my question is, does anyone else think this is legit? Aside from pepper spray, etc., what do you think my mom needs to do in this situation? It's worrying me. She's already started rationalizing this incident, which to me is really horrifying. Thoughts? Just a guy looking for love in all the wrong men's room handicap stalls. This morning I had the day off work and a few errands to run. They included getting the tabs renewed on my car and picking up a few things from Target. The nearest DMV to me was in the basement of a 12-story skyscraper, roughly half the distance between my apartment and Target. The building has a large global market on the main floor with several shops and restaurants. One Somali restaurant was a favorite of my girlfriend and I, and is well known for its camel burgers. My girlfriend and I decided to get some camel burgers for lunch before she headed off for work, and I headed down to the DMV. When we got to the counter, the guy informed us that they would not have the camel burgers available until later in the year. Simply put, it's hard enough to get camel meat in Minnesota to begin with, adding on the fact that it was been rising in popularity amongst the city's Somali community. And the onset of the changing weather, and there was simply no camel meat in the States. He gave us a free sample of a spicy lamb dish instead, which we soon ate and loved. My girlfriend and I parted ways. I go to wait at the DMV, and her to do some shopping around at the market before leaving for work. I was astonished how quickly I made it through the DMV line, in and out in under 10 minutes. This was freaky fast. I was on my way out to move on to Target when, well, the spicy lamb started coming to the end of its journey. I figured I may as well take care of this now rather than later. I went into the restroom and began scoping out stalls. There were 3. The nearest to the door appeared occupied. However, there were 2 more. The third was a handicapped stall. I made my way that way, and that's when this story starts getting weird. As I passed the first stall, I realized that there were not 1 but 2 sets of feet visible under the stall. This was of course weird, but not investigating too closely. I just assumed it was probably a parent helping their child or something like that. Hindsight being 2020, that was the moment I should have delayed Operation Land Drop until I got to Target. I went into the handicap stall, closed it, locked the door. I took off my jacket and hung it up. I was at the cusp of starting my work when I heard someone leave the occupied stall. Then I heard him start talking. "Hey you, gopher. Guy in the gopher shirt." I was wearing a UMN hoodie. "We're just here living our lives. Don't be saying nothing about us." I looked and saw the guy peering at me through the crack between the stall door and wall. "It's just you and me here. Are we gonna have some fun or what?" At this point, Operation Land Drop was on full abort. I was just hoping I can ignore him long enough that he leaves me alone so I can get the hell out of there. "Come on, man, it's your call. What are you gonna do?" I'll be honest, at this point, I don't remember exactly what he was saying, but the bullet points were that it was just him and me here, and it was up to me exactly what we were going to do next. Now, I'm a bigger guy, and it was a busy marketplace just on the other side of the door if this became a scene, so I decided to just book it. Once I opened the stall and started towards the door, I got my first real good look at the guy. He was maybe 35 to 40 years old, about 5'9", black-gray hoodie, and clearly had a few screws loose, to be honest. I was a little relieved, since I felt that he didn't pose an immediate threat to my safety, and this was really, really weird. I eased up enough to even get out the one sentence I said to him. "Dude, I'm just here to take a shit, that's my whole thing." He started laughing. He said, "Oh, come on, man. You know I'll be all like this for you," and he proceeded to get down on his knees. And yeah, I now had 3 items moved to the top of my to-do list. Number 1, get out of this building. Number 2, get out of this building. Number 3, get out of this building. It just so happened that security from the building was located just maybe 30 feet from the restroom door. I decided it was the least I could do to let security know what had just transpired on my way to getting out of there. In that moment, I was a little shaken up, but I composed myself enough to tell the lady behind the desk that I'd just been propositioned for oral sex in the men's restroom. She asked me for a description of the man, and I told her what I could remember: black man, 35 years old, gray hoodie. He was just walking out of the restroom as we had the discussion, and she asked me to confirm it was him, which I did. At that moment, I was terrified of the possibility that some drug kingpin would seek a horrible vengeance on me if this guy found out that I had identified him to security. This is of course ridiculous now, but I was pretty shaken up at that moment. I started spewing vaguely to the lady that I just had to leave right then and there and beeline for the door as she radioed for help ejecting him from the premises. Once I was in my car and driving away, I called my girlfriend. She was super pumped about a new infinity scarf she bought. I didn't even think to ask if she was still in the market. Like I said, the DMV was much faster than expected, but she was. She said that it looked like security was detaining someone, who we assumed was my new buddy. Anyways, dude, let's not meet. Determined Stalker. Hello, Reddit. I am new to this sub, and decided to post my encounter. Here it goes. I am a small, petite female, and this happened last year. I am 22 years old right now, and this was around the end of March. I was at university at the time, and due to financial stuff, I had to live with my mom. My university was 2 hours away by train, and 3 hours away by bus, and usually trains for my university start running around 1 a.m. in the morning. This time we had a very hard assignment from our computer forensics course. It was the last one in the module, and we wanted to do it extra well to secure marks. I was working with my best friend. For some reason, our assignment wasn't working like it should, according to all the slides and documentations we got. It was a hex image of an operating system, and the one our teacher gave us wasn't working, so we winged it and used the sample image. This has caused us to finish very late. We use the library on the university grounds, which is open 24/7. Some students even sleep there if they can't get back home or have early classes. We finished up at 2 a.m. and I headed for the bus. However, my friend asked if it would be safer if I took an Uber taxi home. And all honestly, I wish I did. But I felt up for a long ride with my music, and I could catch some sleep on the way instead of trying to maintain an awkward conversation with a taxi driver. So I said I was going to be fine. After 20 minutes of waiting, my bus finally came, and I set off towards home. I had to take 3 buses, one to Harrow bus station, and one towards Heathrow, and one home. So conveniently, my phone died halfway. I had a Sony Xperia Z, and it always died on me, so I fell asleep and woke up just before my stop, as I always did. I got off and the streets were empty, and silly me decides I was pretty hungry, so I headed off to the only kebab store that was still open. The guy informed me that they close in 15 minutes, but that he'll serve me anyways. It was a small shop, and apart from the guy serving the food, there was one more guy there. He wore dark clothes and a hoodie, and since I came in, I swear I could feel him staring at me. But not normal staring. I had that feeling all the time, like he was fixated on me and never took his eyes off of me. It made me feel very on edge and uncomfortable. 10 minutes passed and my food was ready. I tipped the nice guy and thanked him and set off back to the bus station with my lovely food and forgot all about the creepy guy. I got to the station and my bus was arriving in 20 minutes. I didn't mind. I could eat with my food while I waited. The bus station was mostly empty, just 3 other people there. And then in the corner of my eye, I saw this creepy guy from the shop, standing behind the announcement board watching me again. I felt his eyes on me, and I just tried to ignore it and eat my food. I silently hoped he will get on another bus, and I will be fine. My bus came, and I hurried on. I sat down in the top deck of the bus, and behold, the creepy guy does too, directly behind me, in such a manner that if I were to take out my phone, he could read everything I say. But my phone was dead, so that's when I started panicking a little, because something did happen, I could not call for help or anything like that. 20 minutes into the journey, I still felt him staring at me the whole time. I decided to go sit downstairs in hopes that the small amount of people would be there to put him off. I went downstairs slowly and sat at the front. There was one guy there who was asleep and nobody else but the driver himself. Of course, the creeper moved and sat behind me again. Panic, now setting up, and how the hell am I going to get home? We finally arrived in Hearthrow and I get off the bus. Just pulled up and I ran to catch it. Well, guess what? So did the creep. My heart sank when he got on, so I again sat down at the front. There was nobody on the bus but us. I contemplated different ways to lose him, you know. Should I pretend I'm calling my boyfriend on my now dead phone and that he can't see that it's dead? I don't even know if he knows it's dead. Should I just leg it home and if he follows me, set my dog on him? So instead of doing any of those ideas that seem the best solution now that I look at it, no, I stupidly decide to get off like 15 minutes early. Why? My stupid brain thought that I could lose the guy and go back and get the bus home. So dumb me gets off at a stretch of road. It was an off-road, that had no shops anywhere, just road. Bus stops and houses here and there. Also, the creeper gets off too. So now I'm panicking like hell. Now I know he's for sure following me, so I start walking in a random direction. I had no idea about that area at all. I just took random roads and turns and he was following me on each one. So I got lost. Yep, I'm thinking I'm done now, so it's not even funny, but then I see a main road in the distance. I decide to leg it. I start running and so did he. He was right behind me and I tried to run as fast as I could. I was much faster than him, and a random bus was about to leave. I caught it and got on, and the bus managed to pull up before he could catch it. I was so happy. I sat down, but I had no clue where the bus went, and I was scared the guy might be where I left him. So I went to the end of that bus line, got a bus back, and took a long detour home. I got home at 7 a.m. It took me 5 long hours to make it safe, but I did. Sorry for the long read. And creepy kebab shop guy, let's never ever meet again, okay?